And we're back again. So we've got more of our Power Baseball League to dive into. We've did just a quick recap. We've already done that kind of initial brainstorm. So sorry, we've got something on my nose. We did the initial brainstorm that was essentially us identifying as a baseball association that we had some business challenges we wanted to deal with. And then in our last session, we dove into identifying, basically taking that huge list and narrowing it down to just what are like minimum viable product, I guess, in a sense for the first wave, and came up with some good goals to really flesh through with respect to communications and just getting our data, our manual processes to be a little more efficient, and getting our data consolidated into one place, because right now it's in spreadsheets upon spreadsheets and we don't want that moving forward. And so today we're going to dive into data mapping.
Yeah, so I think how we're going to do that is just using Visio, and we already kind of called out our 3 key entities that we knew we were going to deal with in this phase 1 release. And we know, I mean, we're calling them entities, and we know that's a CRM term, but it's also a database term. So we're thinking of it in general, right? We don't know for sure what it's going to be. But I think the important stuff we want to do here is kind of call out any data points we need, call out any relationships, and if there's any special behavior on those relationships we need to be aware of, and just start picking out important pieces within this data that we need to kind of care about. So you want to start with the players, perhaps?
Yeah, and I think where we would start with this, again, we're running with a fake example, but based on sort of real experiences. So there's typically an application form. So it's all the stuff that we would collect on that application form, right? So we obviously have their name, first and last name, perhaps even their middle name is information we would keep track of.
Yeah.
Their date of birth, their address, and we probably want to break that out into, what's their street and their city and their postal code or zip code, depending on where you live, and your province or state, that kind of stuff. Yeah, country, perfect.
I might be writing this wrong, but we'll call this like KML, Kylie's version of UML.
Perfect.
It'll be fine.
Then we have their gender. This is probably information we want to know.
Right.
We said date of birth, right? We want their parents' name or their guardian's name, I guess we would say.
Yeah. And that brings up a good thing as well, right? So we're going to want some kind of family relationship, right? So
yeah,
how?
I agree.
I guess I feel like we should probably call that out as a separate entity here, and we can put a little star beside it, right? Because we don't know how that's going to work yet.
Yeah, could be. Could be a couple of different ways. So
yeah.
Somehow.
Right. Okay.
Perfect.
Cool.
We are going to need their their what division are they? So I guess their division selection, which is kind of based on age. So maybe we don't need them to select that, but that's, if we're doing a true brainstorm, let's put it on the list. We can decide whether we need it later.
Oh, well, we should add age. Yeah, we didn't add that yet. And then division, like you said. Yeah, so one thing on age, right, is I think you were talking about this briefly yesterday. Maybe that was after our call. We'll also probably, we need to remember that they grow up, right? So we need to also have like date of birth, and there's potential for some automation in there, right? Because in a perfect world, our age would be auto-calculated, right? Based on date of birth.
We have date of birth up top too.
Fail.
Perfect. It happens. It's a brainstorm. Now we could get really granular, and if we were thinking about selections, we could, whether they throw right or left, whether they bat right or left. I don't know that that's important information per se. I mean, that's a thing that a coach would work through
Right.
as they get the team, but
but for sure we would need like the position they play, right?
Yep,
That would be for
definitely.
sure needed. And then we can add optional TBD. Right? Something like that.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to think of when we register our children. I'm pretty sure that we have to give some of their. Well, no, you can't ask for health information. You have to be careful with that. So let's think about, and again, I'm not actually working off an application form. So we think about we're a league who's collecting information. We need to know who the players are, maybe the date that we're going to need the date that they've applied, right? There could be implications there just around whether they pay a different rate or whether they're on a waiting list for a team or something like that. That would obviously be auto stamped.
Yeah, would that be part of that player information, or would that be part of like information related to a specific application?
Yeah, you're right, 100%.
So maybe we should pull that out separate too. And that would be linked to a specific player. Oops, I guess I didn't want to, that's not what I wanted to write here.
So we have their address, so we can map them out. We have the gender, we have their division. We may want to track, and maybe this is part of division, but we may want to track if they're interested in tryouts for the rep teams. So by division, I mean more so their age category division. And then there's that whole, you can choose whether you want to try out for the rep teams or not. So that's probably data we want to capture too.
So that's the, yeah, so that's not, that's like the level of play.
Level of play, yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. Okay, so, all right, when we think of their family, is there anything we think we need to capture at a family level, or do we just need to know people go together?
I think it's just that they go together, right? I don't know that there's much that we would need unless we wanted to get into things like the address could reside on the family level, but I think it gets pretty complex in there because you get, different family scenarios and dynamics coming up, right? So it may not be that they're living together or that kind of stuff. So.
Right. Well, I think that's a really good thing to call out because that could really influence our design. Because I think in like a core CRM, if we're thinking accounts and contacts, now it doesn't make sense because why would I have an account if I don't have any data there, right?
Yeah.
Which all goes into our next conversation. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's probably a start for players and families. Right. Maybe we can get into coaches a little bit.
Sure.
That's a lot of the same information, really. I don't know if you can copy with what you're working in there, but
we'll find out.
Of course you can copy. It's 2020.
Do you know what's else? Uh-oh. I can copy, but it looks ugly. We'll fix it. We'll fix it later. We'll fix it in post. So, and the other thing, oh, there we go. It just needed to behave. We also probably want to check maybe like the date of their last background check, because that's something too. Different counties require you to get it different frequencies, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And this raises a whole conversation around I guess, for lack of a better term, like screening or application, right? Like, so we don't just want anybody coaching. No offense to everybody out there, but sometimes people don't have great intentions, and we want to try and capture that. So there's a whole it's almost like a volunteer management component to this when you're dealing with coaches and things.
Right.
I think is a separate entity, perhaps even a separate data set altogether that deals with what are we doing to screen those people. And I'm a bit biased in that because I used to work for a nonprofit who focused on that kind of stuff, and so we had a design of that, and I don't want to necessarily replicate that, although maybe it was the right approach. So interesting to go through that.
Yeah, maybe, not something to talk about today, but probably something that we could build out in here for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in there. But I think for our first season, we can assume we've already screened the coaches, but we want to know their background check or know some of that information so that we can help know what to do, what's needed next year, right?
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
Would there ever be a need, maybe also outside of the scope for today, but like references, like that might also be a linked entity at some point for...
I think that falls in that screening bucket.
Yeah.
Like in there's references, there's interviews, there's criminal records checks, there's who knows what else, right?
That's probably where I got the idea from last time you told me about your process at
possibly
your nonprofit, because I remember there was a whole thing with how references. Okay, never mind. That's topic for another time.
We probably want their gender as well, like we did for the children. We have date of birth in there. We probably have level of
coaching.
Coaching, yeah. Now that raises a whole interesting piece too. Also, maybe bucketed into this like same idea as the screening stuff. In that we want to understand what certifications they have. Like there's all different courses you can take and get different levels of coaching, and you need specific levels to coach certain divisions and levels like we talked about. So that's something we probably want to manage as well. Understand what they've done, what they've completed.
You need certifications to coach kids baseball?
Well, I'm speaking more so through the hockey lens.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there are certain things you need for some levels of baseball. But in hockey, there's like coach level 1 and coach level 1-2 and all these different things. And as the competitor level increases, there's a higher degree of requirement for these courses. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. Anything else about the coach that we can think of?
We've got their address, we've got their gender, date of birth, last background check, level of coaching. Maybe we want, I was going to say the number of years they've coached.
Oh, yeah.
Or coaching history, perhaps. There's so many different things you can... I was going to say dive down, rabbit holes you can go down.
Yeah, and that's interesting because allegedly, if we're going to keep using this system year to year, then we would be able to look at their team history from year to year, maybe use we're not supposed to be solutioning, but maybe use a roll-up field or something like that to count how many teams of history we had or something, which would be really cool. But for phase 1, we'll have to determine what we think that looks like. Okay.
Yeah, and let's also, something that, as you said, that just popped into my head. Let's not forget that there's a revenue component to this. Maybe I believe that they all operate as nonprofits, but they do need to track how much people are paying for, and there's different tiers of registration costs. Right. So that's probably on the player side. Yeah, how much did they, how much have they paid, and like lifetime value, not in like a profit sense, but in how much do we earn, something along those lines. I'm not really sure where that's going, but that's probably something we want to keep track of.
I'll put a note here too, because some of that might not be day 1, but is something to think about. Because I think, that also could go on. Maybe that goes on the application, right?
It also begs the question if we need again, not solutioning and getting too deep, but is there a need for an e-commerce tool here to keep track of this and give people a cart experience to buy things that they need? And then we talk about fundraising and oh man, you got me started.
Oh,
Fundraising and
no,
donations
fundraising
and
is
all
out
that.
of
Right?
scope.
I
You're
know,
being a
but
scope creep.
if we fair enough, but it's a thing we could think about someday, right?
True.
We start thinking about like we were talking about YouTubers offline, um, and how they sell their merch. Like maybe our league needs merch as a revenue source for the league to help sponsor children to play. And oh man, so many things we could do here.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably a phase 12 thing, but you know.
Phase 12. Yeah, that's good. It's a good place to put it.
Yeah.
But I do think there probably is something important in here because I'm curious, like when we talked a little bit about sponsorship, right? Like if you had a kid who came in through some kind of financial aid, whatever it is, that might be important for the coach to know because if the coach is going to ask them to get new cleats or something, that,
Absolutely.
might they should be aware.
Yeah, and that's a
I
common
don't
thing,
know how
right?
that works.
You get
Yeah.
teams, yeah, they want to have that unified look when they get to the ball diamond or the arena or
Yeah.
whatever. And so the team can come out and say, okay, well, we all got to go out and buy new, jackets and whatever, right? And matching batting gloves or whatever. And that absolutely
Yeah.
a consideration that coaches need to
Yeah.
be mindful of that.
Should be.
Cool.
Okay, so lifetime value that you mentioned, is that something possibly we would want at a family level? Would you want to know how much a family is paying
Yeah, I
for
think
their
that would roll
kids?
up, right? That would roll up. Because you could start to like from a forecast perspective, you can start to look at, okay, if we can recruit so many
Right,
families to have their kids enrolled in sports, that's going to yield a certain
right.
amount and that kind of stuff, because it does cost money to run these leagues. I mean, it may not be
Yeah,
a revenue thing, but there's diamond costs, there's equipment costs, there's umpires, there's all that kind of stuff that the league needs to
right,
cover the costs, and so they do need to be able to forecast their revenue
right,
sources.
right. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the team. So what do we care about? Here, I think this is where our relationships come in handy. Do you think we should start? Oh, I messed that up. Do you think we should maybe start with, maybe we should do some of our relationships before we dig into the team fields, right? Because I think our team is going to be related to a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, in a couple of different ways, right? A coach can
Right.
be on multiple teams and players can be on multiple
Well,
teams,
exactly.
but
Okay, yeah,
maybe
let's
not.
start
Yeah.
drawing those, right? I just want to go from the whole box.
And I don't think that players and coaches are necessarily tied together, but they're tied together through the team,
Okay,
if that
okay.
makes sense. But
So,
maybe that's maybe perhaps a question, not a statement.
yeah. So, okay, one problem at a time. Okay, our players are linked to our teams, and that would be, well, it's a one-to-many relationship because they're going to be on different teams, different years,
We're
right?
also, yeah, different years is what I was just going to say. So we're
Yeah.
also going to need a mechanism for that, right? We're going to need like a season tracker or
Right.
yeah. I
And
mean, we're
do you
talking
think,
baseball, which happens in a calendar year, so we could just do a year's entity, but
yeah, do
sorry.
you think, I guess that's a good question. Does it need to be an entity or would it be just a record? I guess we're going to definitely we would want to be able to compare different teams across the same
Hmm.
season. So, yeah. So then we're going to put in, oh, I lost my stuff. Here it is. I guess it doesn't matter where that connects. And so in that case, we're going to be, I guess, or maybe I don't have arrows on this, so I'm probably going to get this confused. That's fine. But we're going to have one season will go to many teams, right?
Yeah. I got foiled with this in Visio last week where the arrows disappeared. I don't know what happened, but it
Yeah.
it was a pain. And there was a way to fix it, but I forget how it was. I think it's over maybe on the
Well,
right somewhere. But anyways.
better to add in more details, right? Why not?
Hmm.
Okay, so and then we did say we want our coach to be connected to our team.
Hmm.
And that is going to be one coach to one team for a year, but over multiple years, they could host many different teams, right?
Yep.
But I'm not trying to think in CRM, but in CRM on that team, I would envision a lookup to the coach, right? Because
Yeah,
I'd want to be
because
able to view that data together.
yeah, we probably have multiple. So there's a coach, but a coach usually has a there's several. There's a coach, an assistant coach, a trainer, a manager, so on. So we may actually have multiple lookups for each of those different roles on the team. Speaking of, I guess that's level of coaching, but like coaching role is another thing we might want to keep track of in the coach level, because there's a different certifications for training. So again, maybe it's level of coaching, but there's trainers, they go through a different set, and different roles are allowed to do different things. On the bench, I can, as a head coach, I can talk to the referee about things. I can contest certain plays. I can whatever. Trainer can't do some of those things, right? So
move this guy out of the way. Cool. Oh, and so we didn't link our application to anything, but our application would go up to our player, right?
Yeah, and so what's interesting about this is you apply every season. So there's a new application for every season, because we like to repeat things. So that's we're going to have one, exactly. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to tackle as we go through, because you typically think, okay, you submit an application, you're in the system and you're good to go moving forward, but we need to know every season, okay, is your child playing again, right?
Yeah.
And how old are they now, and that kind of stuff.
Is there also a case, am I ever going to apply to a specific team? No. Maybe.
Well, that gets into that tryouts stuff that we talked about, right? So if I'm going to, no, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You're going to apply for the season, and on that application, you're actually going to say, I'm going to try out for the rep team, and if I don't make the rep team, I'll play on the house league team or the secondary rep team or whatever. And so there's tiers, the tryouts, and again, I'm speaking only from where I live and the experience that I see here, but you try out at the highest level, and then there's a set of cuts, and then those kids are eligible to try out for the second tier. And then there's a set of cuts, and those kids would be defaulted into the house league category, right? And so that's a thing we may want to think about too.
Yeah, because I wonder then if we want to keep, we have level of play on the player, but I feel like their level of play submitted on their application might be different than the level of play they're actually playing.
Maybe it's both. Maybe it's last level of play. So when an application is done and they're put on a team, that's toggled onto their record and updated. And it's a dynamic field in that it changes every season. It just overwrites the value that was there. Or maybe we want to keep that track of that by season and say, okay, they applied to be on the rep team. That doesn't mean that they're going to make the rep team. So maybe maybe we do need a category that keeps track of what level of play they had each season. Which I think in that sense is not what I was talking about being a field that gets overwritten. We probably want a year to year, like they played rep, secondary tier, rep, then they went to house league, and then they made the rep team again. So we've got this like multiple, I think that's another entity to keep track of all that.
Yeah. So somewhere in the middle of this, I think we need to pull out, it's like how are almost in between our players and the team, right? So it's going to be current, I don't know, maybe
or last level played, or maybe it's level of play, like you had it as a field before, right?
Maybe, right? Because this would be connecting the player with their team and maybe their position, right? Or I guess what I'm almost envisioning it is there's like the individual player, and then there's like the player, like the team player. What do they actually do on the team? But I think that doesn't make sense. Maybe there's
Everybody should
more.
be a team player, Kylie.
Right, that's true. That's true. Maybe we need more. We know we need some kind of connection in here.
Yeah, and I think that I think what we want here, I'm thinking of what are we trying to accomplish here? We're trying to keep track of um, what level of play has this youth played over the years.
Right.
But then this is a really interesting piece because I think we need to take a step back as we get further into this and say, do we really need that? Like what
Right.
functional value is that data? Because I think that's an easy trap that I know I've fallen into.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we track that information because we need it, but we don't actually need it. We don't actually use that data in any way, shape, or form. And so maybe we need to be careful about adding too much in.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a great call out because let's jump back to what our goals were for today, right? For day one release, which I have up somewhere here, right? So our goals were get data out of spreadsheets, reduce the manual application, and make the plan for consistent communication, right?
Yep.
So I think if we go back over to our Visio here, we could pull out the things that we know are needed, right? So we know, let's make this a pretty color. Our players, yes, we know. Family, I don't think that's needed day one. We should still be aware of it, but
I agree with you.
Coaches for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now that time when I selected it, different things changed color. Okay, that's fine. We do know some kind of team relationship will be needed, right? Level of play, like you said, I don't think we need that.
Not right out of the gate, no.
Right. School session or year.
We do need that.
Although, yeah, except the question would be the data structure is still TBD because we don't have any attributes that are related to the team. Oh, I guess we should have a team name here.
Yeah. Team name. Do we maybe need at the team level? We need to know what level. At the team.
Yeah.
On the team record, we need to know what level of play it is. Thank you. It's been a long day.
And I think I thought of something else on there. But yeah, and then we can talk. There's so many other things we can add on there. Do we also think that we're going to need, although level of play you could also put at the season. I guess that depends how you want to structure your data. Well, then that goes back to this. Okay, no, we don't care. Yes, this works.
It's so easy. This is so good because for people watching, especially if you're like new in the world of admin or you're heading into, designing a system. I mean, this is just
this is what you're doing.
I don't want to call it silly, but it's like a silly example that we're kind of picking out of the air to do just for fun. And very quickly, we've gotten ourselves into this bit of a web of all these dependencies and what do we really need. And it can spiral pretty quick, right? So this is good, good insight.
Do you think we need the application for day one?
No, probably not for day one, knowing that day one, and I think we talked about this last night or yesterday rather, this is really like for the upcoming season. So we know by virtue of having people entered into the system, for starters, this is focused on this upcoming season. But as soon as we want to get to let's bring in historical data, which maybe we want to do right out of the gate. So in that case, then I think we do need to think about whether we need the application level from previous seasons.
Yeah, I could agree with that. And I feel like the application might get some of these other things that we're kind of going back and forth on, like level of play things, that history we might want there. I think some of that might come naturally when we build out the application, but is probably not needed today, like we said.
This is probably a semantics thing that I wonder, it's maybe not application, it's registration.
Yeah. Good call out, because a coach would apply, but a kid just shows up.
Okay. Correct.
What else are we missing?
I think we might want to take some time to just kind of digest that, and I do think we're getting closer to actually looking at starting to select a system of like a platform for all of this, because
Right.
this structure is giving us some good insight into the fact that we're going to have multiple moving pieces that need to tie to each other. Again, I mean, we've been trying to do this as much as we keep referencing CRM because we're CRM people. I'm not 100% sold on that being the solution. It could be something else. So I think maybe in our next session we need to really dive into talking about what system should be the foundation for all this.
Agreed. I think we got through a lot of stuff, and I think we got through it quickly, much faster than we expected. But I think that there was a lot of good conversations in there, just giving us the foundation for what those relationships will look like and what the different data types and things that we'll need to think about.
Yeah.
So yeah, in our next session, we're going to talk about how we could fit this together in a system.
Yeah. What solution should we use?
Do we want to tell them the surprise? No.
That we might have a guest?
Yeah.
A special guest?
Special guest. But we
are going to have a special guest, but we're not going to tell you who. That's right.
Exactly.
We'll just keep you in suspense for a few days until we're ready to roll that out. But yeah, I'm super excited because this person has some excellent insights. So I'm really excited to hear their thoughts on sort of what we're doing and more importantly, what we might consider as we move forward to that selection of a system phase.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kylie. Bye.
Thanks.